All right, buddy. Good morning. This is Friday. What is today?
The 26th
I
of
gotta get
May.
better. I gotta get better with that. I am. I am. I know it's May. I know it's the year 2023. We're somewhere on planet Earth. I mean, that usually is enough to get me by. But
Yeah, I'm not even sure what dimension we're operating in anymore. But hey, time is an illusion.
that
It's
is
all
true. That
relative.
is true. Well, we'll pick up. Where we left off yesterday, where we were so rudely cut off by Streamlabs, and
Yeah.
talk
Thanks,
about.
Obama.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We were talking about crypto Twitter, and I think we did a good enough job explaining kind of what it is, and how you can use it to, advance your education and research in Twitter. Today we kind of wanted to just spitball a little bit and do one of those freeform Fridays. If you look at the markets, Bitcoin's flat. It's going to probably continue to be flat until we get some sort of news on this debt ceiling, quote unquote, crisis that we're hurling towards at a million miles an hour.
Yeah, and I think that what we're the thing I wanted to try and touch on more than anything else is that, again, in broad spectrum, to dovetail off of what Raul Paul and Mike Powell of Cross Border Capital talk about is global liquidity conditions, which, as much as we either love or hate the liquidity conditions, they are what they are. And what I think is not a surprise on the chart here is you're looking at Cross Border Capital published this global liquidity. It shows a somewhat correlation between the MSCI, and you don't need to know what the MSCI is. I barely understand what the MSCI is, but what I'm paying attention to is the global liquidity numbers here, and I think that the confluence, again, in markets, there's these big, like, unstoppable, sometimes unknowable forces that are at work, and we just have to get right with that. And one of the giant unstoppable and sometimes unknowable forces, in my opinion, or in my mind, is that knowing what the big central bank players are doing in terms of either injecting liquidity money into the system or acting in such a way that they're taking it back out through their different operational, like what some call their, I guess in the U.S. is there's this concept of open market operations. And that's like how the Federal Reserve works. I don't know all the details. I've not gone down that rabbit hole. Probably should. But what I'm trying to communicate simply here is that we have this debt ceiling debacle, dog and pony theater extravaganza going on, like it always has. It's going to go down to literally the last minute, and then something will happen, meaning some sort of agreement will be reached. It'll either be perceived. Well, let me. There's two sides. One side's going to hate whatever the other side is, or whatever happens. One side's going to hate one thing. The other side's going to hate the other. It's not going to really solve anything. And there's that. There's the according to the chart, there's been a pullback or a retracement in available liquidity globally, meaning money has just not been pumped into the system as much as it had been. And so that's another factor. We have our interest rate policy stance here in the U.S. from the Federal Reserve, and the likelihood or the mechanisms that exist in the marketplace today that show what the market is expressing, meaning the way the market is expressing its beliefs is that the market is pricing in another hike for July, I think. And this obviously creates tighter monetary conditions. Credit gets more expensive, therefore tighter. I mean, it's harder to access, and more people are likely to be a little more choosy about how they spend and what they spend on. And they may choose, as we earn throughout the days and weeks of the month, we may choose to put more of that cash on the sideline. And that's kind of where I think we are right now. Just my personal opinion, not financial advice. One viewpoint among hundreds of millions potential viewpoints here. that liquidity conditions at large are tighter than they were a little while, or the perception is different than it was back in the middle of April, or like the first part of April, when price, using Bitcoin as a proxy for liquidity here, is how Bitcoin's price ran up to 31,000 ish, and has since been slowly drifting back towards this 26,000 level that we're at now ish. I'll argue that the next leg lower potentially in price is simply to 25,000, because that on the chart shows where there was pretty strong demand, and we're in a supply and demand game here. But long term, does it really matter? I think the underlying thesis still stands, is that monetarily speaking, the U.S. purchasing power, I'll sound like a broken record, the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar at large over years time frame will continue to go lower, and it will be because of the continuance of monetary debasement, because in order to service our debt, we're going to have to roll and refinance, and that's just, until that goes away, which is incredibly unlikely anytime soon, then we're on the same trajectory with these short-term oscillations and movements in price, where short-term sentiment and short-term theatrics are playing a role in price action. That's my
Now give us the bad news, right? Like that was
yeah, that was actually the good news, believe it or not, is that our government, our monetary system, our debt-based way of life as a nation, and how our central bank has control over our money. They've taken away the reserve asset that used to back our paper dollars. They've told the world, now you have to use this as your base layer reserve asset. This is the thing that continues to blow my mind, even at this stage of my journey, is that I keep having these, I call them micro realizations, or like the realization that the dollars that I'm holding, that I have to hold to pay for certain, everyday living expenses on a weekly, daily, weekly, monthly basis, like that's my reserve asset, and I have to spend it. And not only do I have to spend it, and it is the currency as well, but I'm supposed to save in this. But then we have the central bank over here, the Federal Reserve is saying, well, we're going to change the rules of the game, and we're going to modify the parameters here. We're going to change the rate of interest. We're going to raise it. And then because of any number of reasons. We're also going to cut it. We're also going to print money. We're going to buy assets, and we're going to inject liquidity into the system. Oh, wait a minute. That's causing a problem. We're now going to sell assets off our balance sheet and get paid for those assets in dollars that we created out of thin air. So instead of creating more dollars to satisfy whatever the need is, we're going to sell assets, drain liquidity, drain money out of the system, and make it harder for people to get access to credit. Yet every day in the mailbox, you get these, I get every day of the week, I get 1 to 3 to 5 pieces of mail begging me to apply for a personal loan for any number of reasons. And where does that money come from? From the bank. When the bank makes a loan, where does the money come from? Does it come from deposits? No. No, it doesn't. The banks are creating credit out of thin air too. So this is insane. Okay, by the way. But here I am. I'm able to sit here at 30 a.m. I mean, it's not really that dark outside. It's 8:30, and got my coffee. I'm able to, jaw flap about these things. But at the end of the day, what I was trying to communicate there is that what I was talking about before is kind of the good news. The bad news is that if we don't reach a debt ceiling agreement, that it creates a lot of short-term FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Certain government agencies might not be able to make payroll, or some of them will have to figure out. I mean, it'll trigger all of this panic activity, and it's likely to cause, as this news would hit the airwaves in the mainstream, it'll be crypto's fault or it'll be Donald Trump's fault. It won't be the fault of the central bank, or it won't be any of the other issues that are causing these problems. People will hear this and will instinctively, our frontal brains, our frontal lobes will shut down. We'll go into, like fear mode, and we'll think, okay, which $8 a month subscription do I need to cancel right now because I'm afraid that I'll get, like we'll approach this from the wrong angle, and we'll start thinking about how to constrict our own. And like we're talking across like 100 million people in the economy here will get this news, and that to me is a real shame. Is that there will be this knee-jerk reaction to anything that. Well, quite frankly, I think there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction to the negative, no matter what happens, and it's going to. People are going to think that they're going to cancel their Spotify and they're going to cancel their Hulu, and then they're going to go, feel like I dodged a bullet there. But then they'll go impulse. But see, that's an illusion. They're going to go impulse spend on something else, and they'll go on Amazon and they'll stress spend. I'm guilty. I'm the number one spending my feelings victim here of my own doing. So I'm not really a victim at all. But the point I'm trying to get to is that this has real effect in the economy, and you'll see this spun 1,000 ways. But I think that's what I think is unfortunate. So
yeah, no,
I yield
I think
the floor.
You did a good job there explaining that. Look, like the best thing to do is turn the TV off. It's not going to affect your life. This stuff is all garbage. There's you can sit here and pontificate on it and go back and forth. At the end of the day, they're playing a stupid game. And your life is not going to be affected by this. The government is not going to come to save you. Whatever deal they come to is going to be a shit deal for us because they're not going to fix anything, right? And so here we sit. Let's bring it back to Bitcoin and crypto. What can you do? Why should you care about any of this? Well, because there's something that exists today and has for the past 14 years that's an alternative to this crazy system, right? And so you can start to learn about Bitcoin. You can start to understand that you have to get your money out of the current system if you want to have a chance of preserving purchasing power into the future. Getting another job is not going to help you when inflation is up 50%, the price of a home is up 150%, wages have gone up 27%. Like you don't have enough time in a day if you work 24 hours a day to outwork inflation, right? Like it just doesn't, and that's where you get everybody in the world is trying to chase risk assets because they got to do something to beat inflation. And this is a result not of Bitcoin and crypto, but this is a result of central banks and governments. Like this is the key thing here. And you were exactly right. You're not going to turn on the TV and hear the truth. They're not going to tell you that central banks are going to continue to debase money. What they're going to come up with is some absurd thing. I can't even remember the latest one that they were talking about. We're going to, let's just use, we got to make sure these tax cheat crypto people pay their fair share. And it's like, dude, we're a $1.5 trillion industry and you guys are $32 trillion in debt. You spend out your ass, and taxing people isn't the solution. The solution is to stop spending. That's it. Just stop. Like, this is, but what you don't see and it's not people's fault. What you see on the media is they will literally blame everything else and they won't tell you what's really going on. All this stuff is a dog and pony show. They know what they're going to do. This is ridiculous.
Here's a thought. So I'm not against defense spending, but when the defense bill comes across the budget, the table, the desk, it's like $750+ billion that's being spent into private industry. Okay. The government is the customer. Okay. And you think if I'm making, and that's not an investment. Okay. There's no return on that necessarily. Okay. If they're buying products and services from the private sector, and the military is so by way of the military, the U.S. government uses the military to spend the money into the private sector. Okay, it buys materials, it does payroll, it pays for benefits. that money gets put into people's bank accounts by way of their paycheck deposits, and then they go out and they, there's a little bit of tax revenue collected, a little, tax revenues from the payroll. And then we go and spend that money into the economy. And then there's a little bit of sales tax here. And then people trade goods and services. They participate in the labor pool. And there's a little bit of other tax revenue comes in. It doesn't nearly cover what it takes at the big budget number level. So that 800 billion that gets spent into the economy doesn't generate 900 billion in tax revenue. You see what I mean? Like if take the number, they spent $8 into the economy, they get maybe 50 cents back. They don't get $9 back. It's not a great investment, but that's not the point. The point is just to keep the economic motor, the machine running, and the government continues to hold the debt burden to them. But who do they have to pay their debt to? It doesn't make. I mean, it's really, really hard to make sense of this. I'm sorry.
Well, no, the inevitability of this is a default, and the question is, do you default at $50 trillion or $200 trillion? And probably $200 trillion. I mean, they're just gonna invent new ways to print money, and they're not gonna come out and say we're printing money. They can't do that right now because inflation's too high. But all they're going to do, the only option they have outside of default, is print more money. That's it. There's no way around it. I don't know why people keep going back and forth on this. I mean, they're just going to continue to do the same thing they've done over and over and over again. And maybe for a year or two, like we're in right now, they raise rates and sell some stuff off the balance sheet and blah, 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 blah. But it's going to be more money printed at the end of the day because it's the only option. Now, hopefully I'm wrong, right? And hopefully they figure out how to balance a budget and operate in a way that's good for the American people. But I don't see any signs of that at all. I mean, they're not talking. I think I saw last night that the concession that's on the table right now is they're going to reduce spending by 0.02%. But they're going to print, trillions of dollars. I mean, it's absurd. It's literally absurd. It makes no sense at all. And they, the thing I can't stand, there are some I somehow caught a clip of this congresswoman, and she was saying, really the solution is the wealthy need to pay their fair share of taxes. And it was a poll, and the poll literally said, what's the number one thing you want? And it was stop government spending. And it was like 60% of participants. And this congresswoman was like, it's clear the American people want higher taxes. And the interviewer actually pushed back. She goes, Senator, that's not what this poll says. It says people want the government to stop spending. And this politician was up there just parroting some party line, and it's ridiculous. And the fact that they're asking you to pay taxes, but they can't balance a budget. It's unbelievable. You sit here and you go, okay, well, I'm going to work 50 hours a week, and I'm going to give the government 30% of that, and they're going to go piss it away. And by the way, the money that I earned with the time that I spent because of the government spending is becoming worth less every single day. At some point, people will wake up and say, this isn't worth doing anymore. I'm not going to waste my life chasing dollars that aren't worth anything. And I think you're starting to see people, that's part of what's happening now subconsciously, whether people realize it or not. They'll say stuff like, I just can't get ahead, I just can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason you can't is because the purchasing power of your dollar has been eroded away by these morons that keep making the same decisions that we keep voting for, because, people want to feel good about themselves. That's it's not anybody's fault, right? This is the way the system is designed. It's a cloak, right? All these Republicans and Democrats, it's a cloak behind what the main thing is the central banks that run everything, right? And they're the ones that pull the strings, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is the truth. You're not going to see these people on MSNBC. You're not going to there's no weekly meetings for the head of the central banks, right? You have Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank. But the people that own those banks aren't on TV every day giving interviews. You don't see the Jamie Dimon of the central bank getting up and going on CNBC and talking about anything. You know why? Because they don't want to be seen. They're pulling the strings behind the scenes, and that's why we are where we are. It's not an accident. None of this stuff happening right now is like a surprise to anybody that knows what's going on. I mean, all this is designed this way. And if you're not careful, what happens is they will crash everything. Your loans will get called, they will take your assets, and the wealth will trickle up. That's the way this thing is designed. It's not broke, it's just designed this way. And so all you can do in that scenario is find assets that you can own, bearer assets that you have 100% ownership of and nobody can take from you, without physical force, right? And those assets are Bitcoin and digital assets. And there is an option here. And that's why you have to pay attention to this stuff and have to start thinking in a way that's not normal, because you can't turn on the TV and get educated about this stuff. They're spewing propaganda, and it becomes more apparent every day. Sorry, rant over.
No, that was a great point. And I think for the last little bit here is there's all these things we don't have any control over. We can't, I can't like wake up tomorrow and wave the magic wand and like fix everything, okay, as an individual. And the game is going to continue to be played. So that's really like the good news. We know how the system's going to work and how the system has been working. And we know that's not going to change because people hate change. A lot of people hate change. What I'm trying to communicate, though, is to broadcast a little sunshine here, is that there are assets that you can own completely. Bitcoin is one of them. There are several other types of crypto assets that fit this model of potentially fit the model, I should say, for preserving purchasing power and restoring an aspect of financial, like personal sovereignty and financial freedom to be able to transact as you see fit. And like we talked about in prior broadcasts about how Bitcoin and crypto are going to become a 2024, like a mainstream talking point at the presidential candidate level. So that is happening. And what I'm thankful for here is that freedom is back on the menu in a manner of speaking at the candidate level. And I applaud the candidates for being willing to take the political risk of talking down this CDBC nightmare that I can promise you do not want, and openly talking about Bitcoin, being able to own it and transact. And as Ron DeSantis would say, if you want to do Bitcoin, you can do Bitcoin. Okay, I want to do Bitcoin, and I'm not saying that sarcastically at all. I liked the way he said it, and it gave all the haters something to get, like he's living rent free in all the haters' minds now. So well played, DeSantis.
Well, just look at the people who don't like Bitcoin, and then ask yourself, why don't they? The people that are against it, and he flat out came out and said it. They don't like it because they want to control you. This isn't Josh and Ted, talking here and spitballing back and forth. This is a candidate for the president of the United States, literally telling people on a Twitter Spaces that had 400,000 people on it that they don't like Bitcoin because they want to control you. Literally, yeah. That's unbelievable that you have in 2024 somebody running for president in his presidential debut come out and say that. I think it gets glossed over because people are like, well, the Twitter Spaces, blah blah blah. I think it was a giant success. What you're seeing is that he's raised like $8 million now, and the thing has been viewed over 5 million times. And the mainstream media wants to tell you it was a disaster, but if you live in the real world, you understand that it's been a giant success, and for him to talk about that on his coming, his basically his presidential announcement, he's talking about Bitcoin and the fact that the Democrats don't like it because they want to control you. And
your personal we live in a country that was founded on personal freedom, and we're having to fight. We're still today, after 250 years ish, we're having to fight for our personal freedom now because there there are morons and clowns and evil people that want to take positions in government and start to tell us how we can live our lives. And I find that unacceptable. And I will fight like you can't even believe.
Well, and that's why,
And
we say Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, because it's a way to opt out of the system that controls you, right? And people don't realize that, the bet system and the fiat and central bank system is enslavement, and they do it through inflation and taxation, right? It's almost impossible to get ahead when, your money's debased and taxed away. And, they don't want people to be prosperous and think. And, there was a great video my buddy sent me the other day about students in a classroom, and basically saying that, over 150 years, we've had cars change, phones change, housing change, everything changed, but the picture of a kid in a classroom from 150 years ago is still the same way that it's done today, right? You have people that are told what to do for 8 hours a day. They get a grade on their performance. We're not taught to think critically. We're taught to work for somebody else, to be
to
plugged in.
comply.
Yeah, to comply, right? And I think that people are starting to understand that, look, this isn't the way it should be. There are alternatives to this. That's not to say that don't go work, don't go, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying, start thinking about, everything that you've seen on TV for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and realize that they're not out to help you, right? That the only way that you're going to get financially sovereign and free is if you take it upon yourself to start educating yourself and learning about some of the alternatives that exist today.
Yeah. So do some diligence. Take a minute and be selfish and look at what you've been doing and what is happening, and then think about, what can I do to protect myself in the future? And I don't know the answer to that. This is Josh and I can only show you the door. You're gonna have to walk through it, kind of thing.
Yeah, no,
So
and it's more powerful when you figure it out for yourself, and that's what we want to help people do. Is touch on these topics and kind of tell you how we feel, but then go figure it out. We're happy to help you. We're gonna get a site up here pretty soon. You can reach out to us, and we're happy to help. That's our goal, is we want to help people understand this stuff. So but that being said, the world is not ending. No matter what they do, there is extremely bright lights at the end of this tunnel, and that bright light is represented by Bitcoin. Things will be okay. It's going to probably get stupid for a little bit, but that's the world.
Stupider.
Today. Yeah. No, so the advice for Memorial Day weekend is relax, hang out with your family and friends, turn your TV off, and don't pay attention to these people. Now watch what happens over the weekend, though. As I say that, they're going to implement. They're going to slide some bullshit in Friday this afternoon. There'll probably be some thing that gets passed that completely screws everyday American people.
There'll be some power grid attack is a big surprise that's been planned for months, like the Microsoft virus, cyber attack thing that was published yesterday, right on schedule. So we've keep your eyes peeled, and I'll make this quick. The World Health Organization is talking about the next pandemic because they got away with this one so far. They want to schedule the next one, so get ready for that. The best thing you can do is glance and take everything you're reading with a grain of salt, and then at the end of the day, turn off the TV and starve the machine. Turn off if you don't consume the ads, then they don't get paid. And if they don't get paid, they have to reevaluate how they're going to function. And you can vote with your wallet that way.
Well, and I think people are starting to. I think people are starting to realize, look, you look at Bud Light, you look at Target, and this isn't a comment on their advertising. I think what they're trying to do is they're looking at demographics, they're looking at ESG scores, and they're making it's proven to be a terrible, terrible mistake. Now in 20 years, we'll see where we're at, but but I laugh at Bud Light because they can't win. They pissed off their customer base, and then they pissed off the LGBTQ community by not doubling down. So they talk about the ultimate mistake. Whatever,
Yeah. We'll let's.
They're giving it away for free. So if you don't mind drinking Bud Light, you can have a cheap Memorial Day weekend.
Well, on that note, I hope everyone has a safe weekend. We will see you back on Monday. Yeah, Monday.
Monday
We'll
or
do it on Monday.
Tuesday. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
either one.
can. Yeah, we'll talk
We'll
about
give
it.
ourselves our first day off. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. As always, do your own research. Nothing we say is financial advice. Enjoy your weekend, and if you enter these markets over the weekend, you're doing it at your own risk. And go have a couple Miller Lights